You got Alvin Gentry promoting and pushing for an up-tempo squad. That's not how they're going to win basketball games with that particular team. They just don't have it like that. In the end, the season's already over. They don't look very good right now. You can call it youth and experience, but in light of their dormant situation, there is no reason to play Zion Williamson this year.
A few years ago, I traveled to Taiwan, and while I was in Taiwan, I realized that, wow, their Netflix is significantly better. Like, they have shows that I could never get in the United States, and I'm sure most of you guys that have traveled outside of the United States could agree with this. There's some better shows and some different shows on Netflix in different countries. And I began to wonder, how could I gain access to these shows despite being in the United States? And that's how I discovered ExpressVPN. So for those of you guys that don't know what ExpressVPN is, or what a VPN is for that matter, is pretty much imagine whenever you are browsing the internet, you are giving a postcard to a mailman without any envelope on it whatsoever. This mailman could read the message on that postcard and do whatever the heck he wants with it because your IP address is connected to an unencrypted internet network, which means people could freaking hack you over this stuff, man, because your info is there. That mailman that could read the postcard is the equivalent to some guy that could easily get your information or steal your identity over the internet. And that's where a VPN comes into play. A VPN creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet, so it pretty much is the envelope over that postcard, and it makes sure that you are safe from any crazy hackers. A VPN also allows you to anonymously browse the web by masking your IP address so you can switch your location to anywhere in the world and watch whatever country Netflix you'd like. Now, there's a lot of VPNs out there. Why should you choose ExpressVPN? ExpressVPN has the fastest speeds because they invest in premium servers. 2, most of these other companies will just sell you their VPN and you'll have no point of reference or no one to talk to after. But ExpressVPN has 24/7 customer support. 3, it's easy to use. And 4, they are the top rated VPN provider. And ExpressVPN is so confident that you're going to love their product that if you do not enjoy their product, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee where you would get your refund, no questions asked. So go to expressvpn.com/FlightMike or just use my promo code FlightMike at expressvpn.com so you can start enhancing your speeds and protecting your privacy.
I believe Zion Williamson should be a la Ben Simmons or whatever. Sit him out the entire first year and let his rookie campaign start off fresh next year.
On the contrary to what you guys might think, this has happened before. What I mean is that the extremely hyped up #1 overall pick in the NBA draft has been injured for the entirety of his rookie year. In fact, this has happened twice in the past 10 years, and in both cases, the players were extremely exciting players and well worth the wait. In 2009, the Los Angeles Clippers drafted Blake Griffin, an uber athletic power forward who was going to change the way the position was played. In today's NBA, we see big men with impressive handles all the time. Players like Pascal Siakam and Draymond Green consistently show us how important a versatile big man could be. But back then, Blake Griffin was an anomaly. A 6'10" uber athletic power forward that could also take you off of the dribble was unheard of back then. And of course, looking back at it, you can understand why he was taken #1 overall over the likes of James Harden, Steph Curry, and Hasheem Thabeet. But what would happen to Griffin is he would injure his kneecap in the Clippers' final preseason game. He was diagnosed with a stress fracture, and after resting the stress fracture for several weeks, tests revealed that his knee was not recovering properly. So in January of 2010, Griffin would have surgery on his broken kneecap, which would cause him to miss the remainder of the 2009 to 2010 season. Now, you may have already known that, but what you may not have realized is the great position the Clippers were in that offseason to surround Griffin with an all-time great supporting cast. The Clippers had the 8th pick in the NBA draft and used that pick to draft a small forward out of Wake Forest named Al-Farouq Aminu. The pick after was another small forward, only from Butler, and this guy was named Gordon Hayward. And the pick after that was a player who wanted to go to a Los Angeles-based team more than anything, Paul George. Now, it doesn't end there, because we all know what would happen the very next season. Blake Griffin would set the NBA on fire with his electrifying dunks, and the man was on SportsCenter practically every other night. And as the season progressed and the NBA trade deadline approached, the Clippers would trade their unprotected first-round pick in Baron Davis to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Mo Williams. And well, that pick would turn out to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft, which turned out to become Kyrie Irving. Now, this isn't supposed to be a what-if scenario because the Clippers front office was ran by a notoriously incompetent Mike Dunleavy until after the trade deadline. The general manager that took over after that is, to this day, still the general manager of the Portland Trail Blazers, and that's Neil O'Shea. But that's not the moral of the story here. The moral of the story is by Blake Griffin redshirting his first year, the Clippers were in a situation to set their franchise up for tremendous success in the future. But the fact that the Clippers were almost in that situation to make the right decision just goes to show how much resting their superstar has paid off for them. Another example is look no more recently than the 2016 NBA draft. Ben Simmons was dubbed as the next great point forward of the NBA and fell to the Philadelphia 76ers with the number 1 overall pick. Ben Simmons would roll his ankle and miss an estimated 3 to 4 months before finally being ruled out for the year in December. Meanwhile, the Sixers were discovering in a limited capacity what they had in Joel Embiid. You see, the Sixers were already being extremely cautious because Joel Embiid's number 1 red flag coming out of the draft was potential injury problems, and they didn't want to potentially ruin their new nucleus that featured the best player in the 2014 NBA draft and the best player in the 2016 NBA draft. And this set up the Sixers to quote-unquote complete the process by trading up from the number 3 pick to the number 1 overall pick to select the most complete point guard prospect we've ever seen in NBA history. In a trade that I would go on to dub as one of the greatest trades I've ever seen and one of the most brilliant moves I've ever seen by a front office, the Sixers would trade for the right to draft a player that could play on the ball and off the ball, a player who was 6'5" tall with a 6'10" wingspan with an ability to guard multiple positions with great defensive potential, a player named Markelle Fultz. But of course, we all know what would happen. A freak injury that would result in thoracic outlet syndrome would cause Markelle Fultz to have discomfort with his shooting motion. A discomfort so bad that to this day, he is still trying to resolve it. The Sixers' investment proved not to be worth it, as they would trade Markelle Fultz to the Orlando Magic for a pack of bubblegum, and to this day, Sixers fans wonder what could have been if they stayed pat at number 3 and drafted Jason Tatum. But the point is, they were in a position to make a franchise-altering move. They didn't exactly have the most competent front office either at the time. The point being that both of these teams had almost everything to lose and almost nothing to gain by putting their brand new star at risk in a season that would almost certainly yield no results. And the New Orleans Pelicans find themselves in a very similar situation with Zion Williamson. Now, call me crazy, but I believe that if the Pelicans were currently in a situation where they were competitive and absolutely needed Zion, there's no doubt in my mind that he is good enough to play. But that's not the narrative of today. The Pelicans without a doubt did a masterful job rebuilding their roster. One should think that a team that features Drew Holiday, JJ Redick, Derek Favors, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson, and even Lonzo Ball should be competitive enough to beat the OKC Thunder for the final playoff spot in the Western Conference playoffs. But the issue here is that there's been no continuity with this team. Drew Holiday is the only member of this team that has been here since the last year, and Brandon Ingram, as good as he's beginning to show that he is a fairly ball-dominant forward. There were already injury concerns before Zion Williamson was even drafted, so by shutting down Zion Williamson for this year, the Pelicans get to 1, protect a player who can potentially become the face of the NBA, 2, make sure he gets healthy and in shape, 3, begin a fire sale where they trade players like Drew Holiday, JJ Redick, and possibly even Derek Favors for even more assets in the future, and 4, tank in order to secure the talents of another player to pair with him. Which, by the way, you should brace yourselves for when LeVar Ball makes his return to advocate for the grouping of LaMelo with Lonzo on the Pelicans. I see potential for extremely long and versatile lineups that also involve Brandon Ingram and Zion playing the 5 and 4 positions. The Pelicans need to take this year to truly discover what they have on their roster. They already have a ton of assets for the future, enough cap space to sign Brandon Ingram, and the scary part is, Once Zion begins to hit his prime, the Pelicans should begin to see the return of the Anthony Davis trade in the form of unprotected draft picks that the Lakers sent them. Bear in mind that the Pelicans are to receive a top 8 protected pick in 2021, which becomes unprotected in 2022, and an unprotected 2024 pick as well from the Lakers, which I predict becoming extremely valuable. So it makes a ton of sense to punt on this season, because I predict that this is the final year that the New Orleans Pelicans will miss the playoffs in quite some time, if they protect their investment in Zion Williamson.